Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into one of the most influential and honestly one of the strangest books of the 20th century, Jean-François Lyotard's The Postmodern Condition. It's a book that pretty much defined an entire era, but as you're about to see, there's a massive twist to this story.
Right here, this one sentence from back in 1979 really captured a huge shift in how people were thinking. This single idea, this incredulity, this disbelief in what he called metanarratives, well, it became the defining statement for a whole new way of looking at the world. But what on earth does that actually mean?
And this is the book that did it. Before this came out, the word postmodernism was mostly just kicking around in art circles. Lyotard snatched it up and dropped it like a bomb right into philosophy and social sciences, and it just exploded.
Now, here's what's so fascinating. This book was never meant to be some grand philosophical statement. It actually started as a report for the government of Quebec, of all things. They just wanted him to look into the state of knowledge in our super advanced, tech-heavy societies. Okay, so let's get into the heart of it. What in the world is a meta-narrative, and why did Lyotard think we were all suddenly losing faith in them? So think of meta-narratives as the big, epic stories that societies tell themselves to make sense of, well, everything. These are the huge stories about progress, about reason, about where we came from and where we're all headed, and they claim to be true for everybody, everywhere. No exceptions. So on the one hand, you've got the modern world, which was built on these huge stories. You know, the story of the Enlightenment, where we all believe that reason, its science, will just keep making life better and better. Or the story of Marxism, where history is an epic struggle that ends in a perfect society. But Lyotard's whole point was that in the postmodern world, those huge stories have just shattered. And what we're left with is what you see on the right. Tons of smaller, local, competing stories, with no single one being the big ultimate truth.
So, what happened? What was it that shattered these grand narratives? What caused this massive change in how we think? Well, according to Lyotard, the answer was simple: technology. He was pointing directly at the crazy fast advancements in all these fields. He saw the rise of computers and mass media and realized that the old ways of sharing knowledge were breaking down. Suddenly, information was coming from all over the place. It was decentralized, and that made it way, way harder for one single grand story to have a monopoly on everyone's belief.
And here's the real kicker. This changed what knowledge even is. Lyotard argued that the old goal of finding truth was getting replaced by a new goal he called performativity. So in other words, an idea or piece of knowledge wasn't valued because it was true anymore. It was valued because it was useful, because it was efficient, because it could make money. Just think about it. A lab might get funding not because they're on the verge of some fundamental truth about the universe, but because their research could lead to a hot new product. That's performativity.
I mean, the ideas in this book were absolutely game-changing. They literally shaped how academics thought for decades. But just when everyone was busy debating his theory, Lyotard himself delivered the biggest plot twist you could possibly imagine. What Lyotard later said about the book that made him a global superstar, well, it's just jaw-dropping. Okay, so first, there was the big confession. He pretty much admitted that his understanding of all the science and tech he was writing about was, let's just say, not great. And then came the real bombshell. He just flat out says that he didn't just get some details wrong. He actively invented parts of his argument. He basically made stuff up to make his theory work. And it gets worse. He didn't just say, oh, I messed up. No, he dismissed the entire book as a parody, a joke. And just to put the final nail in the coffin, here's his final verdict. The book that countless thinkers built their entire careers on, the text that defined postmodernism for a generation, was, in his own words, his absolute worst. So this leaves us with this totally wild paradox, right? How did a book that its own author called a piece of fiction, a parody even, become one of the most important philosophical works of its time? How does that even happen? I mean, just look at this. On one side, you have the book's undeniable, massive impact. It defined an era. And on the other side, you have the author himself just completely trashing it. This crazy contradiction is the real, lasting legacy of the postmodern condition. And so that leaves us with a final question that feels, well, it feels just perfectly postmodern, doesn't it? What does it actually mean for us today? If one of the most important theories about our loss of faith in big stories,
was itself just another made-up story. Now that is something we're thinking about.